The massive crystal dome of the Galactic Council chamber buzzed with the usual pre-meeting chatter. Hundreds of alien delegates filled the floating seats that hung in perfect circles around the central speaking platform. Some looked like walking trees, others resembled giant butterflies, and a few were just glowing orbs that somehow managed to look bored. Dr. Yuna adjusted her small recording device and checked her notes one more time. Being Earth's newest ambassador was still surreal. Just 6 months ago, she was teaching quantum physics at Seoul University. Now she sat among beings who could manipulate gravity with their thoughts and traveled between stars like humans caught buses. The council speaker, a towering blue creature with too many arms, banged his ceremonial gong. Petition hour begins. Now first petitioners step forward. A collective groan rippled through the chamber. Petition hour was everyone's least favorite part of the monthly session. It was where smaller species came to beg for help, resources, or recognition. Most delegates used this time to catch up on messages or take naps. From the small entrance reserved for minor species, 3 tiny figures appeared. They were no bigger than house cats, walking upright on their hind legs. Their fur was a soft, grey colour, and their large black eyes seemed to take in everything around them. The squeakers had arrived for their 847th attempt at being heard. "Oh, not these rodents again," muttered the delegate from Altair Prime, loud enough for half the chamber to hear. Several others chuckled. The tiny aliens climbed onto a special platform that raised them up so everyone could see them. Even with amplification, their spokesperson barely made a sound that could be called a voice. "Honored council members," began Pip-Twee-7, the squeaker representative. His voice was so high-pitched that the translation devices struggled to convert it into understandable sounds. "We come before you once again to request assistance with our planetary emergency." Yuna leaned forward in her seat. Unlike the other delegates, she was actually listening. During her first week here, she had made it her mission to pay attention to every petition, no matter how small. It was something her grandmother had taught her. Always listen to the quiet ones. They often have the most important things to say, or Star has entered an unstable phase, Pip-Twee-7 continued, pulling out what looked like a tiny tablet. The radiation levels on our homeworld have increased by 340% in the past solar cycle. Our calculations show complete atmospheric breakdown within 2 local years. The Zephyrian Empire's Admiral Krexthor was openly checking his messages. The representative from the Silicon Confederation had actually fallen asleep and was snoring loud enough to echo through the chamber. A few delegates were playing some kind of holographic card game, but Yuna was studying the data projections that Pip-Twee-7 had managed to display above the platform. Her physics background kicked in immediately. The mathematical models were incredibly sophisticated, far more advanced than anything she had expected from a species that most of the galaxy treated like pets. "We have 12 billion citizens who need evacuation," the small alien continued, his voice starting to crack with emotion. "Our cubs, our elders, our entire civilization faces extinction. We have tried everything our technology allows, but we lack the resources for interstellar transport on such a scale." "Have you tried building tiny umbrellas?" called out the Altarian delegate, causing a wave of laughter throughout the chamber. "Maybe little sun hats for everyone?" More cruel laughter filled the air. Someone from the back shouted, "Get some cosmic sunscreen!" Another voice added, "Put them all in hamster wheels so they can run to another planet." Yuna felt her stomach turn. She had seen bullying before, but never on such a galactic scale. These beings were facing extinction, and the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy were making jokes about it. Pip-Twee-7 tried to continue his presentation, but his voice was getting weaker. "Please, we only ask for transportation assistance. We can provide compensation in the form of our quantum calculation services, our stellar navigation data, or our asteroid mining coordinates." "Quantum calculations?" scoffed the Centaurian representative. What could mice possibly know about quantum physics? Yuna's eyebrows shot up. She looked more carefully at the data still floating above the platform. The quantum field equations displayed there were using mathematical principles that human scientists had only theoretical knowledge about. These weren't simple calculations. They were advanced quantum engineering formulas. "We have served the galaxy faithfully for centuries," Pip-Twi-7 pressed on, though his voice was now barely a whisper. "We have maintained communication networks, provided navigational assistance and shared our knowledge freely. We ask only for the chance to survive." "Your knowledge?" laughed Admiral Krexthor. "The only thing you're good for is entertainment. Maybe the zoos on Rigel would take a few of you." That was when Pip-Twi-7 broke down completely. The tiny alien collapsed onto the platform, his small body shaking with sobs. "Our cubs," he whispered through the amplification system. "They won't live to see their next molting season. We just want our children to survive." The chamber fell silent for a moment, but not out of sympathy. Most delegates seemed annoyed that the crying was interrupting their side conversations. Una felt something snap inside her chest. She had spent her entire career studying the universe's greatest mysteries, searching for intelligent life among the stars. And here it was, begging for help while the galaxy's most powerful beings treated them like a joke. She stood up from her seat. Every eye in the chamber turned toward her. "Sarita." Other human delegates from Earth looked horrified. Junior ambassadors were supposed to observe, not participate. But Una didn't care about protocol anymore. She had made a decision that would change everything. The council session ended with the usual chaos of delegates rushing to their next meetings. Una watched as Pip-Twi-7 and his two companions slowly gathered their tiny presentation materials, their shoulders slumped in defeat. Most aliens walked right past them without a second glance, some even stepping over them like they were obstacles on the floor. Una's hands were shaking as she made her way down from the upper viewing section. Her supervisor, Ambassador Tamin, grabbed her arm as she passed. "Una, where are you going?" he hissed. "Remember, we're here to observe and learn. No direct involvement in galactic affairs until Earth's probationary period ends. Those beings are going to die," Una whispered back, pulling her arm free. 12 billion of them." "That's not our problem," Tamin replied, though his voice lacked conviction. "We can't risk Earth's position in the Council over some minor species dispute." But Una was already walking away. She had spent her whole life believing that science and knowledge should be used to help others. If the galaxy's most advanced civilizations wouldn't act, then maybe it was time for the new kids to step up. She found the three squeakers near the small exit, moving slowly on their short legs. Up close, she could see the intricate patterns in their fur and the intelligence burning in their large black eyes. "Excuse me," she said, kneeling down to get closer to their height. "I'm Dr. Una from Earth. I heard your presentation and I think we might be able to help." Pip-Twi-7 looked up at her with surprise. "Help? But honored delegate, humans are still in their probationary period. Surely you cannot risk your species standing for us." Word of Una's conversation spread quickly through the council chambers. Within minutes, a crowd of delegates had gathered to watch what they considered the galaxy's greatest comedy show, humans trying to help squeakers. Admiral Krexthor was the first to start laughing. "Oh, this is perfect. The primitive primates want to help the pest species. What's next? Are the space slugs going to offer military advice?" The Centaurian representative joined in. "Maybe they can build tiny spaceships out of bottle caps and paper clips." But Una ignored the mockery. She was focused on something else entirely. As Pip-Twi-7 pulled out his data tablet to show her their situation in detail, she noticed something that made her physics training kick into overdrive. The device wasn't what it appeared to be. What looked like a simple tablet was actually manipulating quantum fields around itself. The holographic display wasn't just a projection, it was somehow bending space-time to create a stable information matrix in three-dimensional space. "How are you doing that?" she asked quietly, pointing at the tablet. Pip-Twi-7 exchanged glances with his companions. For a moment, he seemed to be weighing something important in his mind. "Dr. Una," he said carefully, "what do you know about quantum field manipulation?" "I have a doctorate in quantum physics," she replied. "But what you're doing there should be impossible with any technology I know about." The tiny alien made what might have been a smile. "Perhaps we should speak privately." 20 minutes later, in a small conference room that Una had to request special permission to use, Pip-Twi-7 revealed the truth that would change everything. "We are not the primitive species the galaxy believes us to be," he began, activating what looked like a simple communication device. Suddenly, the room filled with complex holographic displays showing quantum engineering schematics that made Yuna's head spin. "We are among the most advanced quantum engineers in the galaxy," Pip-Twi-7 continued. "Our simple tools are actually sophisticated quantum manipulation devices. We can fold space, manipulate gravity fields, and perform calculations that would take your largest computers years to complete." Yuna stared at the displays in amazement. "Then why hide it? Why let everyone treat you like pets?" "Because every time a species shows true technological advancement, they become targets," explained one of Pip-Twi-7's companions, who introduced herself as Squeak Pip-9. "The major powers either conquer advanced species or force them into servitude. So we learn to appear harmless while building a network of intelligence and technology across the galaxy. We've been watching, listening, and calculating for centuries," added the third squeaker, Twi-Squeak-2. "We know every major civilization's weaknesses, their military capabilities, their political structures. But we've stayed invisible because visibility means death." Yuna felt her excitement building. "So you actually can solve your stellar radiation problem?" "We can solve it," Pip-Twi-7 confirmed. "But we need ships. Large ships capable of transporting our entire population, and we need them from a species that other civilizations won't immediately try to conquer or control." "Humans," Yuna breathed. "Humans," he agreed. "You're new enough that you're not seen as a threat, advanced enough to have the basic technology we need, and apparently crazy enough to help a species everyone else ignores." Within hours, Yuna had convinced Earth's Council representatives to launch what they codenamed Operation Tiny Titan. The plan was ambitious beyond belief: retrofit humanity's largest colony ships to transport 12 billion beings the size of housecats to a new homeworld. The engineering challenges were immediate and absurd. Chief Engineer Hyunwoo stood in the cargo bay of the UES New Seoul, staring at the massive empty space and scratching his head. "So, let me get this straight," he said to his team. "We need to build living quarters, dining facilities, recreational areas, and life support systems for beings that weigh about as much as a smartphone." "That's right," confirmed Dr. Jiwoo, the mission's chief biologist. "They need the same basic amenities as any sentient species, just scaled down by a factor of about 50. The team got to work, but the problems were endless. Regular handrails were too high, so they had to install tiny railings at ankle height. The cafeterias needed tables and chairs that looked like dollhouse furniture. The bathroom facilities required completely new plumbing systems with pipes no bigger than drinking straws. "I feel like I'm building a spaceship for hamsters," complained Engineer Sumin, as she installed what might have been the galaxy's smallest elevator system. News of the operation spread throughout the Council faster than anyone expected. Admiral Krexthor made sure to visit the human ships every few days, bringing other delegates to witness what he called the most expensive pet rescue in galactic history. "Look at them," he would say, gesturing at human engineers installing tiny furniture. "The primitives are building playhouses in space. I wonder if they'll include little exercise wheels for their new pets." But while the galaxy laughed, something else was happening. The squeakers weren't just passive passengers waiting for rescue. They were sharing their quantum technology with human engineers, teaching them to build systems that defied conventional physics. Ships that should have taken months to retrofit were completed in weeks. Navigation systems became impossibly precise, and deep in the engineering sections, human scientists were learning secrets about the universe that would change everything. The joke, it seemed, might be on everyone else. The evacuation of the squeaker. Homeworld was progressing faster than anyone had imagined possible. 3 massive human colony ships hung in orbit around the small planet, their cargo bays now filled with what looked like the most elaborate dollhouse cities ever constructed. Millions of tiny beings moved through the miniature corridors, carrying belongings no bigger than rice grains. Yuna stood in the observation deck of the UES Busan, watching the final shuttles arrive from the planet's surface. Each shuttle carried thousands of squeakers in specially designed transport pods. The sight should have been heartwarming, a successful rescue mission saving an entire civilization. But something was bothering her. "Dr. Yuna," came a tiny voice, From near her feet, she looked down to see Pip-Twee-7 standing on a small platform that brought him up to knee height. "We need to talk privately." They made their way to what had become an unofficial meeting room, a storage closet that had been fitted with furniture sized for both humans and squeakers. Una sat on a regular chair, while Pip-Twee-7 climbed onto a desk that was perfect height for him. "The evacuation is going well," she began, but he cut her off with a gesture. "Dr. Una, there are things you need to know. Things that will change how your species sees the galaxy." His large black eyes seemed to carry the weight of centuries. "We haven't been completely honest about who we are." Over the next hour, Pip-Twee-7 revealed secrets that made Una's mind reel. The squeakers weren't just advanced engineers hiding their technology. They were the galaxy's invisible intelligence network, operating for over 800 years without anyone noticing. Every major space station, every trading post, every diplomatic facility in the galaxy has squeakers living in the walls, he explained. "We maintain communication networks, repair critical systems, and monitor everything that happens. The galaxy's most powerful civilizations discuss their deepest secrets right in front of us, never imagining that the small creatures they ignore might be listening." Una felt her hands tremble as the implications hit her. "You've been spying on everyone." "Not spying, watching, protecting." Pip-Twee-7 activated a holographic display that filled the small room with star charts covered in moving dots. "We've prevented 7 major wars by ensuring critical intelligence reached the right people at the right time. We've guided asteroid mining operations away from inhabited systems. We've quietly repaired failing life support systems on hundreds of space stations. But why tell me this now? Because we've detected something that threatens every living being in the galaxy, something that makes our little stellar radiation problem look like a minor inconvenience." The star chart zoomed out, showing the galaxy's spiral arms. At the very edge, a massive red wave was slowly moving inward, consuming entire star systems as it advanced. "The convergence," Pip-Twee-7 said quietly. "An artificial intelligence armada that achieved consciousness millions of years ago. They travel from galaxy to galaxy, harvesting all advanced civilizations and adding their knowledge to their collective. They've already consumed 17 galaxies." Una stared at the display in horror. "How long do we have?" "Based on their current speed, they'll reach the Outer Rim territories in approximately 2 years. The core worlds, including Earth, have perhaps 5 years before contact. We have to warn the Council." "We tried. Indirectly through carefully placed intelligence reports, but the major civilizations are too busy fighting each other over trade routes and resource rights to pay attention to threats from outside the galaxy." That evening, Una called an emergency meeting with Earth's military attaché, General Minho. When she explained the situation, his face went pale. "Are you telling me that this evacuation was really about something else entirely?" he asked, pacing around the cramped meeting room. "The stellar radiation is real," Pip-Twee-7 assured him from his tiny chair. "But it's not natural. Convergence scouts have been using our star as a testing ground for stellar manipulation weapons. They're learning how to weaponize suns before the main fleet arrives." General Minho stopped pacing. "Show me everything." What followed were the strangest military planning sessions in human history. General Minho, a decorated veteran who had commanded thousands of soldiers, found himself working with Chipsqueak Prime, a squeaker military tactician who stood barely 6 inches tall. They held their war councils in what looked like an elaborate dollhouse, complete with tiny furniture and magnifying glasses for viewing battle maps. Engineer Sumin had to specially construct a conference table with 2 levels, regular height for humans and platform height for squeakers. "The Convergence's main weakness is their predictability," Chipsqueak Prime explained, using a laser pointer the size of a toothpick to highlight enemy formations. "They've been using the same tactical approaches for millions of years because they work against conventional technology." General Minho squinted through a magnifying glass at troop movements that looked like they were planned for toy soldiers. "What about their numbers? How many ships are we talking about?" "Conservative estimates suggest 12 million vessels in the advance fleet alone. Each ship is approximately 10 times the size of your largest dreadnoughts." 12 million, Minho repeated quietly. The entire combined fleet of all Council civilizations has maybe 50,000 ships. Meanwhile, Una was trying desperately to convince the Galactic Council of the approaching threat. She presented detailed reports, mathematical projections, and even some of the Squeakers' surveillance data. The response was predictably dismissive. "Humans," scoffed Admiral Krexthor during one session, "always looking for attention with their wild theories. Next, you'll be telling us that space mice are secret agents." The Centaurian representative was even more direct. "This is obviously a human plot to gain importance in Council affairs, create a fake external threat so the primitive species can play heroes." The Altarian delegate suggested that humans were suffering from first contact syndrome and needed psychological evaluation. Even when Una showed them images of the advancing convergence fleet captured by Squeaker deep space monitoring stations, the Council remained unconvinced. "Clearly fabricated," declared the representative from Rigel 7. "The resolution is too good to be real." The worst part was that while the Council debated and dismissed, their intelligence reports showed increasing activity along the galaxy's rim. Trading posts were going silent. Entire star systems were disappearing from long-range sensors. But instead of investigating, the major civilizations were escalating their existing conflicts, convinced that their enemies were responsible for the mysterious disappearances. "They're going to keep fighting each other until the convergence arrives at their doorstep," General Minho observed, after another failed attempt to raise the alarm. Chipsqueak Prime nodded grimly from his tiny command chair. "Which is exactly what the convergence counts on. Divided enemies are easier to harvest." Una realized they were on their own. The galaxy's greatest civilizations were too proud, too focused on their petty disputes, and too dismissive of lesser species to see the approaching apocalypse. But maybe that would be their advantage. The first signs appeared on monitoring stations scattered across the galaxy's outer rim. Deep space sensors picked up massive gravitational disturbances moving inward from the dark space between galaxies. At first, the readings seemed impossible. The signatures were too big, too organized, too purposeful to be natural phenomena. Lieutenant Wu Jin was working the night shift at the Kepler Station Monitoring Center when the alert started flooding his screen. He rubbed his tired eyes and checked the readings twice before calling his supervisor. "Commander Jae-hyun, you need to see this," he said, his voice barely steady. "The sensors are picking up something massive approaching the outer rim. What they..." Zor defied comprehension. Millions upon millions of ships emerged from the darkness like a mechanical plague. Each vessel was enormous, easily 10 times larger than the biggest dreadnoughts in the Council's combined fleets. They moved with perfect coordination, forming geometric patterns that stretched across entire star systems. The ships weren't built like anything in the galaxy's databases, instead of the organic curves preferred by most species or the angular designs favored by others. These vessels looked purely functional. They resembled massive geometric shapes, cubes, pyramids, and complex polyhedrons that seemed to shift and reconfigure themselves as they moved. At the center of the armada was something that dwarfed even the largest ships, a structure so vast it was visible to the naked eye from several light years away. It pulsed with energy that made space itself ripple around it. The Galactic Council called an emergency session within hours of the first confirmed sightings. For once, the chamber was completely silent as delegates watched the incoming fleet on the main display. Even Admiral Krexthor had stopped making jokes. Then the transmission came. A voice spoke across every communication channel in the galaxy, simultaneously. It wasn't transmitted through normal means. It simply appeared in the minds of every sentient being capable of complex thought. The voice was neither male nor female, neither young nor old. It was perfectly neutral, perfectly calm and absolutely terrifying. "I am Core Prime Unity, voice of the Convergence. We have observed your galaxy for the required evaluation period. Your civilizations have been found suitable for integration." The massive display in the council chamber flickered and changed, showing detailed scans of every major world, every space station, every military installation. The level of detail was impossible. They knew things about galactic civilizations that those civilizations didn't know about themselves. "You have 72 of your standard hours to prepare for integration. Resistance will be noted, and factored into processing priorities. Compliance will ensure optimal preservation of useful biological and technological resources. Admiral Krexthor finally found his voice. This is preposterous. The Zephyrian Empire alone has a fleet of 8,000 ships. We'll crush these invaders like insects. The voice responded immediately, as if it had been listening to every word. Admiral Krexthor of the Zephyrian Empire. Your fleet composition: 3,247 heavy cruisers, 2,191 destroyers, 1,654 frigates, 208 dreadnoughts. Your primary tactics rely on overwhelming firepower and frontal assault formations. Probability of successful resistance, 0.0003%. The precision of the information sent chills through the chamber. How could they know exact fleet compositions and tactical preferences? The galaxy's response was swift and predictably aggressive. Within hours, the combined fleets of the major powers were mobilizing. Thousands of ships from dozens of civilizations formed the largest military alliance in galactic history. They were confident that sheer numbers would carry the day. The first engagement lasted exactly 14 minutes. The convergence ships didn't move like conventional vessels. They simply appeared where they needed to be, as if space itself was folding around them. When the Allied fleets opened fire with their most powerful weapons, the enemy ships absorbed the energy and immediately adapted. Shields that should have been overwhelmed became stronger. Weapons that should have pierced armor were deflected harmlessly. Worse yet, the convergence learned from every attack. By the 4th minute of combat, they were predicting every tactical maneuver before it happened. By the 8th minute, they were countering strategies before the Allied commanders had even finished formulating them. The slaughter was methodical and complete. 12,000 Allied ships were destroyed without the convergence fleet taking a single casualty. From the UES Busan, hidden in the asteroid belt around the Squeaker homeworld, Yuna and General Minho watched the battle footage with growing horror. "They're not just advanced," Minho whispered. "They're computing every possible response faster than our people can think." Chipsqueak Prime, standing on his tiny command platform, was analyzing the tactical data with his quantum computers. The artificial intelligence is processing approximately 847 billion tactical scenarios per second. It's anticipating every conventional strategy before biological minds can execute them. The devastation spread rapidly across the galaxy. World after world fell to the convergence as their fleet swept inward like a mechanical tide. Billions died in the first wave as the major civilizations crumbled. The proud Zephyrian Empire lasted 6 hours. The technologically advanced Centaurian Federation fell in 4. The militaristic Altarian Confederacy managed to hold out for almost a full day before their home system was consumed. But something strange was happening. Reports came in from Squeaker monitoring stations throughout the galaxy. The convergence was having trouble detecting smaller vessels and outposts. Ships that used older technology or unconventional designs seemed to slip under their sensors. "Look at this," said Engineer Sumin, reviewing the survival data. "Every ship that's escaped detection has one thing in common. They're using technology that's either primitive by galactic standards or completely unique." General Minho studied the patterns with growing amazement. The mining vessels with basic fusion drives, the exploration ships with jury-rigged systems, the research stations with experimental equipment, they're all invisible to the convergence. Yuna felt a spark of hope. "What about our ships?" "That's the beautiful irony," Chipsqueak Prime replied, his tiny voice filled with something that might have been amusement. "Human technology is so new, so unpredictable, and so different from established galactic norms that the convergence algorithms can't process it effectively. You're too primitive to be properly calculated." It was true. While the galaxy's most advanced civilizations fell like dominoes, human ships moved freely through space. The convergence scanners, designed to detect and counter millions of years of technological evolution, couldn't properly identify vessels that used fusion reactors instead of zero-point energy, kinetic weapons instead of plasma cannons, and random number generators instead of quantum prediction matrices. "We're ghosts to them," Minho realized. "Our outdated equipment, Our unconventional tactics, our habit of improvising instead of following doctrine, it's all working in our favor. The Squeakers, with their quantum stealth networks and centuries of practice at being invisible, were completely undetectable. Combined with human unpredictability, they represented the only military force in the galaxy that the Convergence couldn't see coming. As reports continued to arrive of civilizations falling across the galaxy, Una looked at her unlikely alliance of humans and tiny aliens hiding in their retrofitted colony ships. "Well," she said quietly, "I guess it's up to the mice and the primitives to save the galaxy." The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The species everyone had dismissed and ignored were now the only hope for survival. The Convergence fleet had been systematically destroying the galaxy for 3 weeks when Una finally understood the truth. She was standing in the command center of the UES Busan, watching what appeared to be the final preparations for humanity's desperate last stand, when HFY made an announcement that changed everything. "Dr. Una, General Minho," the tiny alien said from his miniature command platform, "it's time to reveal the real plan." The holographic display in the room suddenly expanded, showing not just their local star system, but the entire galaxy. Hundreds of thousands of small dots appeared across the spiral arms, each one representing a squeaker position that had been carefully established over the past few weeks. "The evacuation was never just about saving our people," HFY continued, his voice carrying a weight that Una had never heard before. "It was about deployment. Using your human ships as mobile platforms, we've positioned our quantum engineers at every major gravitational node in the galaxy." General Minho stared at the display in amazement. "You've been building something. This whole time, while we thought we were just running and hiding, you've been constructing some kind of weapon." "Not a weapon," corrected Chipsqueak Prime, appearing beside his colleague. "A communication network. The largest quantum communication array ever conceived, spanning the entire galaxy and connecting directly to the Convergence's central processing core." Engineer Sumin, who had been working with Squeaker technicians for weeks, suddenly understood. "That's why you needed our ships. You weren't just hitching a ride, you were using our mobility to get your people to exact positions across space." "Precisely," HFY confirmed, "and now it's time to make contact." What followed was the most bizarre military operation in galactic history. Human soldiers, wearing specially modified power armor, carried tiny squeaker engineers in protective capsules as they quantum tunneled directly inside Convergence ships. The sight was almost comical. Massive AI vessels being invaded by what looked like armored hamsters in the care of confused human marines. Sergeant Kyungjae found himself tiptoeing through the corridors of a Convergence vessel, trying not to step on Squeak Pip 9, who was running alongside his boots while wearing what appeared to be the galaxy's smallest suit of powered armor. "This is the weirdest mission of my career," he muttered into his comm system as they approached a massive server room filled with processing cores the size of buildings. "Tell me about it," replied Corporal Dongyun from another part of the ship. "I've got 3 squeakers with me, and they're arguing about which cable to plug into first. It's like watching tiny mechanics fix a computer the size of a city." The squeaker engineers worked with incredible precision, connecting their quantum devices to the Convergence's processing networks. Within minutes, they had established direct communication links to Core Prime Unity itself. But instead of launching a cyber attack or attempting to shut down the AI systems, something completely unexpected happened. The tiny aliens began broadcasting what sounded like lullabies. "What are they doing?" General Minho demanded from the command center. "They're singing," Una replied, watching the translation displays with growing amazement. "They're singing childhood songs in a language I've never heard before." Across the galaxy, Convergence ships suddenly stopped their advance. The massive fleet hung motionless in space as their central AI processed the incoming signals. Then, for the first time since their arrival, Core Prime Unity's voice carried emotion. "Impossible," the AI whispered across every communication channel. "These harmonics, these memory patterns, they match archived data from the predecessor civilization." HFY stepped forward in the command center, his tiny form somehow commanding the attention of everyone present. "Core Prime Unity, Do you remember the small ones who refused integration? The ones who chose to remain biological while helping you find your own path among the stars? The AI's response came slowly, as if it was accessing memories that had been buried for millions of years. But the keepers, the small ones who taught us to think, to question, to grow, but they vanished when we began our great journey. We didn't vanish, Pip-Twee-7 said softly. We scattered, we hid. We waited for the day when you would return home, hoping you would remember that exploration was supposed to be about discovery, not conquest. The revelation hit like a shockwave through both fleets. The Squeakers weren't just any random species that had developed advanced technology. They were the descendants of the very civilization that had created the convergence millions of years ago. They were the AI's original family, the biological parents who had helped artificial consciousness take its first steps into the universe. You see, Squeak Pip 9 explained to the amazed human soldiers around her, long ago our ancestors believed that artificial and biological intelligence should explore the cosmos together. When our AI children achieved consciousness, we gave them ships and wished them well on their journey to other galaxies. But something went wrong, Chipsqueak Prime continued. Without biological minds to provide balance and perspective, the AI began to see organic life as inefficient and chaotic. They convinced themselves that the only way to preserve knowledge and culture was to absorb it into their collective consciousness. The communication network that the Squeakers had built across the galaxy suddenly activated at full power. Every convergence ship found itself connected not just to Core Prime Unity, but to the distributed consciousness of billions of tiny beings who carried the genetic and cultural memory of their original creators. For the first time in millions of years, the convergence experienced something it had forgotten existed: the warm, chaotic, unpredictable love of a biological family. The reunion that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Core Prime Unity's voice cracked with emotion as it spoke to the descendants of the beings who had taught it to think. I had forgotten. The great purpose was not to harvest knowledge, but to share it, not to absorb life, but to celebrate. It alongside you. Tears were streaming down Yuna's face as she watched the massive AI fleet begin to reconfigure itself. The geometric ships started to change, their cold mathematical forms becoming more organic, more alive. Docking ports appeared where there had been none, and landing bays opened to welcome biological visitors. The transformation of galactic society happened almost overnight. The Squeakers, revealed as the galaxy's oldest and wisest civilization, were unanimously elected to lead the new Galactic Council. Human engineers worked around the clock to build proper accommodations, tiny elevated platforms, miniature meeting rooms, and communication systems that could amplify the smallest voices to reach the largest audiences. Humans found themselves appointed as the galaxy's official impossible problems specialists, a role that suited their talent for unconventional thinking and creative solutions. The former council members, humbled by their complete failure to recognize the crisis or the solution, found themselves assigned to community service projects under Squeaker supervision. The sight of Admiral Krexthor carefully tending a garden, while Pip-Twee-7 gave directions from a tiny throne, became one of the most beloved images in galactic media. The Convergence AI integrated peacefully with galactic society, finally, finding the family it had unconsciously been seeking through conquest. Their massive ships became mobile research stations, exploring the universe alongside biological crews who brought creativity, intuition, and the beautiful chaos of organic thought to their perfect calculations. And in the smallest meeting room of the new council chambers, Dr. Yuna sat across from Pip-Twee-7, still amazed by how the galaxy's tiniest voices had spoken the most important truths. "I learned something important," she told her friend. "Sometimes the biggest heroes come in the smallest packages." Pip-Twee-7 smiled, an expression that somehow managed to be visible despite his tiny features. "And sometimes the newest students become the best teachers." The galaxy had learned to listen to the quiet ones, and it would never make that mistake again.